Now, I will introduce our first speaker of the day. Our first speaker's favorite sport to watch on TV is mixed martial arts. He says that with other sports, you can just go out and do them with friends and family. He'll leave mixed martial arts to the professionals because he doesn't like black eyes or broken noses. Besides, TV show replays, close-ups, and slow motion can't really do that in real life. Please join me in welcoming Khalid Woods in his speech entitled Why Disarmament? Demobilization and reintegration of ex-combatants is essential to the reconstruction of stabilization operations.
The 1994 massacre of Rwanda, execution of men, women, and children because of ethnic tensions. Women raped and murdered, children mutilated and abandoned, and people forced to kill their kin or be killed by rebel forces. Could you imagine that? Killing your brother-in-law, sister-in-law. As if poverty and disease weren't enough, suffering villages were destroyed and bloodlines ended. Greed, hatred, and bloodlust led to nearly 10,000 deaths, occurring daily for 100 days. That's about 400 people every hour, 7 people every minute. An estimated death toll of about 100,000 people, 1/5 of the total population. Militia members were able to obtain AK-47 assault rifles by simply filling out simple requisition forms. Other weapons such as grenades, no forms necessary, and often handed out in mass quantities. These atrocities demand international intervention. Interventions that can stabilize war-torn countries by assisting the government to reintegrate these millions of refugees, to dun insurgents among ex-soldiers and militia fighters, to shift away from this crisis to a medium and long-term development plan. Today, I will present to you disarmament, the mobilization and reintegration of ex-combatants into society. This is an essential component of stabilization and reconstruction operations. First, I will present to you an overview of what disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration is. And then I'll provide you a synopsis of what DDR, as it will be referred to from here on out, can do for you in a security, social, and economic environment. And then I will have a concluding statement. So, what is DDR? Has anybody ever heard of the term DDR before today? DDR is actually a process. It's a process that aims to contribute to security and stability in post-conflict environments. It is essential because without security, the other pillars of post-conflict reconstruction cannot begin. The primary objective is to help ex-combatants who are left with no livelihoods, and the only support networks they have are the ex-combatants who aided them to commit these atrocities on others. DDR seeks to support ex-combatants so that they can become active participants in the peace process and become law-abiding citizens once again. The process consists of, first, removing the weapons from the hands of the combatants. That's the disarmament portion. Then, the process takes the combatants out of their military structure, the demobilization portion. And finally, it helps them to integrate themselves back into society, socially and economically, and that is the reintegration portion of DDR. So what can DDR provide to security, social, and economic environment of post-conflict environments? From a security standpoint, we know that violence will be rampant in a post-conflict environment. So with high rates being attributed to mostly the flood of arms in a community, the disarmament portion provides incentives for ex-combatants to turn their weapons in. There's also often monetary, and it's a form of disarmament called coercive method of DDR, and also has symbolic rituals that help with the justice and reconciliation portion of the disarmament phase. It goes into the demobilization reintegration phase as well. In Uganda, for example, they have something called the egg stump, where individuals, because the egg represents innocence and purity, by them stepping on this egg, the community allows the individual to come back. That's the reconciliation portion that begins. Not necessarily saying this would work in all cultures, because the egg doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. It definitely wouldn't work in America, but that's our job, to go and find those kind of things that can help the healing process. From a social standpoint, armed conflict causes human capital to be destroyed, and many people are often become refugees and are displaced, and high quantities of HIV and AIDS spread due to the violence that men often induce upon women. So what DDR does is establish different programs to address this by having referral services that send people to different hospitals to obtain counseling and treatment. And they also do assessments on the viability of natural resources and the economic infrastructure of the country, which is crucial. And this leads me into the economic section of the speech. Typically, ex-combatants are deprived of any kind of education or employment. So this program, not to say that it can sustain this, because this is really a short-term, a transitional type of program, but what they do is help develop job training, vocational training, and some education. Us as Westerners have a natural tendency to want to make everybody an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, but these countries typically need lower level, mostly agricultural type jobs and reconstruction type jobs. And what better way than to use the ex-combatants? They're mostly the men who are in the ages 19 to probably 35, maybe even younger, because they are special programs that address child soldiers and women become ex-combatants. But like in Afghanistan, the DDR program worked with the various ministries like agricultural, reconstruction, to come up with a program called the ANBP, which is the Afghanistan New Beginning Program, and it acted as an interface between ex-combatants and the various ministries, so that skills were matched up with appropriate locations. So in closing, the United Nations Secretary General states that this process is vital to stability in reconstruction and post-conflict environments. Without an effective DDR strategy, no trust can be built between former combatants and non-combatants. No peace can be successful without armed groups, as long as they are a threat to fragile peace efforts. So I urge each of you, if you ever have the opportunity to participate or contribute to a DDR effort, to do so, to help keep global security and state legitimacies, and last but not least, to prevent genocide from reoccurring. Mr. Toastmaster.